Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Way Wednesdays virtual Midrash. I'm Doug Hamp. With me in studio is Bob Rico. We're going to get into Deuteronomy today. I'm really excited about that. But before we do, I have to let you know, the new website. It is done. I'll keep making a few tweaks here and there, but the new website is up and ready. I really want to invite you guys to come over here. We got some cool stuff like, hey, I'm new, right? So you can come over here and see what we believe, mission and vision, our story, leadership, connect cards. We've got media. We have connect, kind of what happens at the congregation. Give, you can do that. We're using a new giving platform. I want to let you guys know about that. I believe it's going to make the whole thing easier and save money. So that will be pretty cool. And we have some events that are coming up. Check that out. The bookstore and the Torah portions. And if you just kind of scroll down here, you'll see this really pretty thing. Right here's the upcoming study for this week. I'm pretty excited about that. The weekly teachings, you can go back. I got putting up PowerPoint slides. I got to keep working on those. And then some core teaching videos. Here's where we gather. Here's a big old map for you. Here's what we do. We make disciples. We talk about oneg, potluck. Don't bring shellfish, thank you. And a couple things of what's going on. And then the cool thing, get the app. Yes, please get the app. That's really cool. The app is going to help us all stay together. It's going to help us be more cohesive. At least that's what I'm praying. And where can you get this app? Well, you can either just go there and click on that, or you can go to subsplash.com/thewaycongregation/app. That's one way you can get it. You can also put your phone on that QR code right there if you want to do that as well. So make sure you get the app, and the app is going to become more and more important as we go on. All right. So I'm going to, like, first, for example, we're going to have some push notifications. I'm not going to spam your phone, I promise. But we're going to let you know what's coming up. And, then you can actually join some of like the subgroup push notifications. So if you want to get the daily devotion, then you can say, yeah, count me in. And you can opt into that. And there will be other things as well. There's also a messaging feature. I think this is very cool, so that you guys can interact and you can pray for one another. Sometimes the prayer requests come to me, and trust me, I really do try to pray for you guys. But sometimes, man, I'm human and I forget, or, stuff happens. So I think it'll be awesome if you can pray for one another and I don't become that bottleneck where things get stuck, So I think that's super important. So make sure you get the app. It really is something that is going to help. There it is again. Or you can just go to thewaycongregation.com. Just scroll down to the bottom and you will see the app there at the bottom, thewaycongregation.com. Or skip all that and just go to either the iStore, right, the Apple Store, or you can go to Google Play Store. And you can put in the Way Congregation. Make sure to look for our little icon, like this one that you see right there. Okay, if you see that guy, then you found the right app, and you can put that on your phone. It's really cool. We're still working on creating our own Parshat HaShavua reading plan, so that it'll just automatically. You know how sometimes they have a reading plan and you just click on it and it brings you to that right spot. It even reads for you. We're making our own. So that's taking a little bit longer to get done. You can also go back and check out the core teachings, things like haunted theology, the triunity of God, God's divorce and remarriage. These are things that we've been talking about a lot at the Way Congregation. And they're really important because they establish a foundation for us to understand other doctrines that we're going to keep building upon. So sometimes people say, well, you didn't explain such and such. I'm like, yeah, but I explained it like 500 times before this. And this one time I didn't explain it because I'm, only have so much time I'm trying to get through. So really check those out. I encourage you to get it, share it with others, and then if you have suggestions, say, why don't you do this on your app? Just let me know, and I bet you we could do that. So it's going to be a great tool to help ultimately spread the good news of God's kingdom. That's what the goal is to be a disciple, make disciples. That's what we're trying to do at the Way. And of course, through with a Torah Sabbath perspective, obviously. So without further ado, I'm delighted that my co-host, Bob Rico, can be here. Hey, Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing super. I'm really looking forward to this transition from one book to the other.
Absolutely. Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, last week we ended the book of Numbers. In that chapter 31, we read where the Lord spoke to Moses and said, you will have to bring justice for the children of Israel that were released from Egypt. And after this, you will be gathered to your people. And Moses earlier, who struck the rock, and he shouldn't have spoken to the rock. And what happened is that he struck the rock twice because of his frustration with the people. As a result of that, he was barred from going into promised land. He didn't know when they were going to go into the promised land exactly, other than when the last person died of that generation of men, then they were going to be able to go in. So here we are, and God says to him, after this event occurs, after there is justice, and you form this army of 12,000 men, 1,000 from each one of the 12 tribes, then when all this operation is completed, then you will be gathered to your people. Now, on the surface, it would appear, gee whiz, I never got to finish the plan that God had for my life. I blew it. I don't know. This is a terrible, horrible thing. But the reality is that God works through all kinds of problems that we create for ourselves. Because what ultimately happens is as we transition into Devarim, which means words, it is the opposite to the New Testament where we have Greek, and it's the Logos. So if this were translated into Greek, it would have said Logos, not Devarim. At any rate, these are the words that Moses writes out of his heart. He is anointed by God to write his last will and testament, as it were. He is going to write these words, anointed by the Holy Spirit, which is a recap of the entire events that they experienced coming out of Egypt, along with very strong sage advice and recommendations for the children of Israel to go into the land and to experience the goodness that God has for them in the fulfillment of the promise that God made to their forefathers as far back as Abraham. However, as we go into this chapter, what I want to reinforce is that Moses is going to die on his 120th birthday. He's going to be 120 years old, and then he is going to be with his people. Now, you would think off top, gee whiz, it must have been a terrible thing, because he does ask God numerous times in petitioning God. He says, is there any possible way that I can go with the people into the land and lead them into a land like a shepherd leads his flock? And the answer was, no, don't talk to me about this. This is a final decision. You're going to have a birthday present. You're going to be able to be with your people on your birthday. So the question is, how did Moses receive this? Well, as we will go through this text, we will see some remarkable situations. And the rhythm of this book is coming from a man's heart to, as it were, his children. And he's giving them a moral will. He is saying, listen to God and inherit the land. Do what he tells you, as I've been trying to instruct you, and you will live. Please be happy about it. And he's really excited about this whole situation. He regrets that he's not going to go into the land, but he's terribly excited. In fact, when I was thinking about it last night, a song ran through my mind. I just have to find the lyrics to this song, because what was occurring to me as I was thinking about this passage was the words from a song, "I'm so excited." Now that song, as I found out from going through the lyrics, it's about a very intimate experience that is anticipated in that song. But part of the lyrics really spoke to me. I'm so excited. I can't hide it anymore. I'm excited. I think I'm going to lose control. I like it. And just can't, I just can't express more than that. It's just an excitement, because finally Moses gets to write from his heart. Before, he was being dictated, in my opinion, from the Messiah in that tent. Every word, every yod, every tittle, everything that was being written down was an exact statement from God himself. And as a result of that, we get the 4 books of the Torah. Now Moses is getting an opportunity to speak from his heart under the anointing of the Holy Spirit and tell the people, this is what's going to happen. It's the most exciting situation you could possibly imagine. And as we go through the text, I'm going to be able to comment on what that excitement is about.
Wow, that was really amazing. I'm so excited. I just can't hide it, right?
Right.
And,
exactly.
That is the kind of excitement. It says the joy of the Lord is my strength, right?
Absolutely.
My strength is the joy of the Lord. Or you can kind of put that backwards, sort of reverse engineer it. Like,
right.
where do I get the strength? When I'm joyful in the Lord. And why am I joyful? Because I'm going to be with him. And I'm going to see him face to face, and I get to experience the pleasures that are at his right hand forevermore.
Exactly right. Absolutely.
But he is the pleasure, right? It's not just something external to him, but he is
That's
that
right.
point of pleasure. And yeah, I kind of feel bad for Moses. Oh, the poor guy didn't get to go into the land. He got something better. He got to go home to be with.
He gets to go home. He gets to be with God. I mean,
he wasn't sitting on a bed slowly wasting away. He wasn't hit by a car. He wasn't run over by a chariot, didn't die in battle. God said, okay, today's your day. It's done. Let's go. And he probably just dropped dead. His ghost went out of him, and that was it. And he's like, whoa, this is really cool. Well, hey, let's jump into the text, man, because there is so much in here.
That's
okay.
Right.
Ele ha-Devarim. So in case you guys didn't know, you probably know this already because you're all such great Bible scholars. But the way that they would name these books is they'd take the first couple words and then they would pick one. So Ele ha-Devarim, these are the words. And as Bob pointed out, the word devar is logos. Okay, devarim is the plural, of course. So he says, these are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel on this side of the Jordan in the wilderness in the plain opposite Suf, between Paran, Tophel, Laban, Hazerot, and Dizahav, which is probably Dahab, quite frankly. But anyway, good snorkeling down there. It's 11 days' journey from Horeb by way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Now it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, that Moses spoke to the children of Israel according to all that the Lord had given him as commandments to them, after he had killed Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth in Edrei. On this side of the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moses began to explain this law, saying, the Lord our God spoke to us in Horeb, saying, you have dwelt long enough at this mountain. And he goes on, turn and take your journey and go to the mountains of the Amorites, to all the neighboring places, in the plain and the mountains and in the lowland in the south and in the seacoast, to the land of the Canaanites and to Lebanon as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them and their descendants after them. And I spoke to you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear you. The Lord your God has multiplied you. And here you are today, as the stars of heaven in multitude. May the Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times more numerous than you are, and bless you as he has promised you. How can I alone bear your problems and your burdens and your complaints? Choose wise, understanding, and knowledgeable men from among your tribes, and I will make them heads over you. And you answered me and said, the thing which you have told us to do is good. So I took the heads of your tribes, wise and knowledgeable men, and made them heads over you, leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50, leaders of tens, and officers for your tribes. Then I commanded your judges at that time, saying, hear the cases between your brethren, and judge righteously between a man and his brother, or the stranger who is with him. You shall not show partiality in judgment. You shall not hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid in any man's presence, for the judgment is God's. The case that is too hard for you, bring to me, and I will hear it. And I commanded you at that time all the things which you should do. So we departed from Horeb and went through all that great and terrible wilderness which you saw on the way to the mountains of the Amorites, as the Lord our God had commanded us. And then we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, you have come to the mountains of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. Look, the Lord your God has set the land before you. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not fear or be discouraged. And then every one of you came near to me and said, let us send men before us, and let them search out the land for us, and bring back word to us of the way by which we should go up, and of the cities into which we shall come. The plan pleased me well. So I took 12 of your men, one man from each tribe, and they departed, went up into the mountains, and came to the valley of Eshcol, and spied it out. They also took some of the fruit of the land in their hands, and brought it down to us, and they brought back word to us, saying, it's a good land which the Lord our God is giving us. Nevertheless, you would not go up, but rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. And you complained in your tents and said, because the Lord hates us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us. Where can we go up? Our brethren have discouraged our hearts, saying, the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and fortified up to heaven. Moreover, we have seen the sons of the Anakim there. Then I said to you, do not be terrified or afraid of them. The Lord your God, who goes before you, he will fight for you, according to all he did for you in Egypt before your eyes, and in the wilderness, where you saw how the Lord your God carried you as a man carries his son, and all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet for all that, you did not believe the Lord your God, who went in the way before you to search out a place for you to pitch your tents, to show you the way you should go in the fire by night and in the cloud by day. And the Lord heard the sound of your words and was angry and took an oath, saying, surely not one of these men of this evil generation shall see that good land of which I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and his children I am giving the land on which he walked, because he wholly followed the Lord. The Lord was also angry with me for your sake, saying, even you shall not go in there. Joshua the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. Moreover, your little ones and your children, who you say will be victims, who today have no knowledge of good and evil, they shall go in there. To them I will give it, and they shall possess it. But as for you, turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Then you answered and said to me, we have sinned against the Lord. We will go up and fight just as the Lord our God commanded us. And when every one of you had girded up his weapons of war, you were ready to go up into the mountain. And the Lord said to me, tell them, do not go up nor fight, for I am not among them, lest you be defeated before your enemies. So I spoke to you, yet you would not listen, but rebelled against the command of the Lord and presumptuously went up into the mountain. And the Amorites who dwelt in that mountain came out against you and chased you as bees do and drove you back from Seir to Hormah. Then you returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not listen to your voice nor give ear to you. So you remained in Kadesh many days, according to the days that you spent there. Wow. That is quite the summary. The first thing that just jumps out to me is that they complained, right? They complained against Moses. They complained against God. And, I think it's so easy for us to say, well, that was the generation back then, but we're so different. But, we complain a lot. And even though it had not been very long, like roughly a year since they had come out of Egypt, in that space of time, you'd think, well, of course they remember everything that the Lord had done for them. They remember how he destroyed Pharaoh. They remember how he opened up the Red Sea and bread was falling from heaven, all those things. And yet humanity, the sons of Adam, are quick to forget the good things that the Lord has done. And this is why I think it's so important that we count our blessings, count them one by one, count your many blessings, see what the Lord has done. You got to do that every day, because it's easy to start getting foul-mouthed, maybe not four-letter words, but we start complaining. We start griping and moaning and I can't believe God doesn't love me. Did he bring me this far? And I had to get, a little self-confrontation some years ago. Doug, come on, knock it off, and I had to counsel myself and say, God has not brought you this far to kill you. And yet that was the voice that I kept hearing in my head. God brought you this far and now he's going to desert you. And I finally realized it's not God telling me that, it's the devil. Right? It's not God putting those terrible words in my mind. It's the other guy, because he wants me to become discouraged, to complain. And when I do that, I am not showing any faith. I'm really becoming a practical atheist. And every time we do not believe God, we're really acting as practical atheists. It doesn't mean that you think that there's no God, but you're acting as if there's no God. That's what I mean by practical atheist. And we see this again and again. Thankfully, God is merciful and kind, but there's a fuse, there's a deadline, to that patience. And after 10 times that they tested him, he said, okay, that's it. This generation is not going in. And I'm teaching through Mark chapter 8 this week. And the Pharisees, after Jesus had healed the sick, cleansed the leper, given sight to the blind, he opened the ears of a deaf and mute man, he cast out the demoniac of 5,000 demons, he raised the dead, et cetera, fed the 5,000, the 5,000, the 4,000. And then they say, give us a sign. You're like, really? Now you want a sign? Like, what about all that other stuff that I just did and you guys were watching? You saw all those things that the Messiah only could do, and Jesus did all those things, and then you say, give us a sign. And I tell you, the parallel between what happened with the children of Israel after all the incredible signs that you don't see every day that God did on their behalf, and they're like, oh, whatever, is that all you got? What else you got, Lord? Can you really do something even more impressive, right? They were at Mount Sinai when the mountain was on fire, and it was this big thunder and lightning and this incredible light show, and they're too afraid to go up on the mountain because the Lord is there. And then when they finally get to the promised land, as God had promised, they're like, oh, we can't do it. There's something really wrong here. Okay, my monologue is over, Bob. Your turn.
Well, I want to, first of all, it's the very same thing. The enemy never changes his tactics, and he only uses what works for him and works to destroy us. I mean, what have you done for me lately is what you were talking about, right? After all those miracles, everything that God is doing, everything that the Messiah is revealing in the Torah, and he's explaining to the multitude, just as Moses said he would, and with signs following to verify what he just finished teaching and saying. And all of a sudden it's the attitude, well, what have you done for me lately in the last 5 minutes? I mean, our mentality is so short. I want to regress just a little bit and deal with Moses. He starts this portion on chapter 1 on the first of Shabbat. He has 37 days before his birthday. His birthday will end on Deuteronomy 34, 1 through 12. And there will be an epilogue by God who writes, in all the time that he and I were together. This is an incredible statement. A man turns 120 years old and God writes, Moses and I saw each other face to face. His eye did not dim, nor did his strength waver. What a legacy. Moses was virile all the way through this entire episode, and yet we get his gut-wrenching experiences with all the complaining, all the whining, all the negative influences that the people were bringing in from Egypt, essentially, because they were their children. That was what they had. They were slaves, and now they have to tell their children, "Oh yeah, we're going to go into the promised land, and everything's going to be really fine." Moses opens this chapter up with the excitement that goes something like this. Look at the promise that God gave Abraham way back then. Look at you. You are now being fulfilled right now. You are as the stars of heaven. God has fulfilled that promise he made back then, has fulfilled it in you right now. That's what's exciting. Not only that, but he will make you like the sands of the sea. And you will possess the gates of your enemies, which he writes down extensively in detail, all those gates. And then he goes a little further and talking about those promises that God gave and reinforcing, has God done anything for you lately? Yes. Look what he has done. And then he enumerates all those elements that God was doing. And still there's whining and complaining. There's even a little whining on the part of Moses. Look at, I'm not going into the land because of you. I stood up for you. And look what happened. It wasn't quite that way. He didn't talk about the fact that he struck the rock in his frustration and lost the opportunity that God had for him to go into the promised land. But he doesn't address that, I noticed in reading through this. But what are the promises? What are the life lessons? What are the promises that God has in his word? Do we appropriate them? Do we even know what those promises are? Have we looked for those promises and say, look it, I come before you like that woman before an unjust judge, and I present to you these promises that you have made in your word. And I simply fall on what you have said, oh dear Lord. You are merciful to me. These are the promises you have made. In fact, I would suggest in journalizing to sit down and actually get a book. It might be a spiral bound book and start writing day by day what God has done. It has helped me immensely when the enemy comes and he says, blah, 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 blah. God doesn't really like you. He likes others better, or whatever his pitch is on that day. You can go back to the historical record of our own lives and say, on this day, back on this specific day, the Lord answered this, and he did this, and he did this other, and this other. You're a liar, you're a slanderer, and all you want to do is kill me and my family and everybody else. Get out of here. I'm not going to listen to any of that. I will not listen to that. Moses goes further, and he starts with the choosing, in my opinion, of the first constitutional democratic republic in history. What do I say that for? He gets men that are going to be the representatives of the people. That's never happened. You always lived under a king. You always lived under whatever his whim was. If you knew somebody, if you could only maneuver yourself into a situation where you can get an advantage because you knew somebody. God destroys all that. And he gives Israel an opportunity for self-governance. He gives them the constitution called the Torah. And he says, I want men of understanding. They understand the Torah. They understand my kingdom. They understand my desires. They understand what my thinking is on a given subject. And they can be the representatives of the people. They can present these arguments to a just court. It tells the judges, you are not to go out and look at other circumstances that be influenced by friends or by people who have money or people who have standing or people that are really that are poor and they can't speak for themselves, and then you decide that you're going to be able to speak for them. No, you are to be a just judge. You are to make decisions based on the thinking of God. You are to have a legislative group of people, later on to be known as the Sanhedrin, and ultimately to be known as what every government has in Israel today, as they have a governess there along with the Sanhedrin.
Yeah, and let me just point out in case people missed it, he says that you're to appoint heads, right? Bring people who are trustworthy, etc., and I'll make them heads over thousands, heads over hundreds, heads over 50s, and heads over tens, right? That is the representative government that you're talking about. And even, all that time when they did not have a king in the United Kingdom, right, under Saul, etc., during the time of the judges, before Saul comes along, that was supposed to be the representative government, right? You'd still have those men in those positions that were representing the people, and ideally they would, govern themselves on these various issues. And then the people wanted a king because we want to be like all the other nations. And I'll tell you, it's really easy to go from a type of democracy to go into a type of autocracy, right? I mean, before Hitler came along, there was just a brief little spell that Germany was experiencing some form of democracy, and it didn't last very long. It quickly turned into yet again an autocracy that ended very badly, of course. Even with you think about Russia, right, and all of the communism and all that, supposed to be a very democratic, for the people, by the people. That was the sales pitch, but in the end, it just became Lenin, and then it became Stalin, etc. So, a very, very sad situation where we humans seem to be giving up on this idea of representative government that was established here by Moses, well, by God ultimately, but through the voice of Moses. So very cool. We got 2 more chapters to get through, and there's some juicy bits in there. I really want to get to those. So are you agreeable that we should go to chapter 2?
Yeah, let's go to chapter 2.
All right, very cool. Yeah, there's some great stuff. I don't want to miss it. All right, then we turned and journeyed into the wilderness of the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spoke to me, and we skirted Mount Seir for many days. And the Lord spoke to me, saying, "You have skirted this mountain long enough. Turn northward, and command the people, saying, You are about to pass through the territory of your brethren, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir, and they will be afraid of you. Therefore, watch yourselves carefully. Do not meddle with them, for I will not give you any of their land. No, not so much as one footstep, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. You shall buy food from them with money, and that you may eat, and you shall also buy water from them with money, that you may drink. For the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hand. He knows you're trudging through this great wilderness. These 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing." One second. All right. And he says, "You've lacked nothing. And when we pass beyond our brethren, the descendants of Esau, who dwell in Seir, away from the road of the plain, away from Elat and Ezion Geber, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. Then the Lord said to me, Do not harass Moab, nor contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of their land as a possession, because I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. The Emim had dwelt there in times past, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. They were also regarded as giants like the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Emim. The Horites formerly dwelt in Seir, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their place, just as Israel did to the land of their possession, which the Lord gave them. Now rise and cross over the valley of the Zered." So we crossed over the valley of the Zered, and the time we took to come from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed over the valley of the Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war was consumed from the midst of the camp, just as the Lord had sworn to them. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them to destroy them from the midst of the camp until they were consumed. And so it was, when all the men of war had finally perished from among the people, that the Lord spoke to me, saying, "This day you are to cross over at Ar, the boundary of Moab. And when you come near the people of Ammon, do not harass them or meddle with them, for I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the descendants of Lot as a possession." That was also regarded as a land of giants. Giants formerly lived there, or dwelt there, but the Ammonites called them Zamzumim, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. But the Lord destroyed them before them, and they dispossessed them, and dwelt in their place, just as he had done for the descendants of Esau, who dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Horites from before them. They dispossessed them, and dwelt in their place, even to this day. And the Avim, who dwelt in villages as far as Gaza, the Kaftorim, who came from Kaftor, destroyed them and dwelt in their place. Rise, take your journey, and cross over the river Arnon. Look, I have given it into your hand, Sihon the Amorite, the king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to dispossess it and engage him in battle. This day I will begin to put the dread and fear of you upon the nations under the whole heaven, who shall hear the report of you and shall tremble and be in anguish because of you. And I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kedemoth to Sihon, king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, "Let me pass through your land. I will keep strictly to the road, and I will turn neither to the right nor to the left. You shall sell me food for money, that I may eat, and give me water for money, that I may drink. Only let me pass through on foot, just as the descendants of Esau, who dwell in Seir, and the Moabites, who dwell in Ar, did for me, until I cross the Jordan to the land which the Lord our God is giving us." But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass through, for the Lord your God hardened his heart and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into your hand as it is this day. And the Lord said to me, "See, I have begun to give Sihon and his land over to you. Begin to dispossess it, that you may inherit his land." Then Sihon and all his people came out against us to fight at Yahaz. And the Lord our God delivered him over to us, so we defeated him, his sons, and all his people. We took all his cities at that time, and we utterly destroyed the men, women, and little ones of every city. We left none remaining. We took only the livestock as plunder for ourselves, with the spoil of the cities which we took. from Aroer, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, and from the city that is in the ravine. As far as Gilead, there was not one city too strong for us. The Lord our God delivered all to us. Only you did not go near the land of the people of Ammon, anywhere along the river Yabok, or to the cities of the mountains, or wherever the Lord our God had forbidden us. Wow. Well, of course, I kind of, like to geek out on the whole giant stuff. But, it's pretty interesting, when you start to look at the giants that were living there. Now, the Bible in the book here, it's called, they're often termed as Rephaim for the word giant. So the translators are doing it because they understand that there's an equality between these terms, and it's absolutely true. I wrote a couple books on this in case you guys are interested. You can check that out at my website. But these were hybrids. These beings, these people that lived there were hybrids, and God was dispossessing them. Remember when he had spoken to Abraham, he said that your descendants will be slaves in a land that's not theirs, and for 400 years they'll be there. In the fourth generation, I'll bring them out, because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. That's really significant. And what we see here is that God is using other nations. He's using the Moabites. He's using the Ammonites to dispossess those people to some degree. And now he's going to use the Israelites for the final cleanup, if you will, to dispossess these Amorites. Now, the Amorites were a people that we find in the Table of Nations, but there's something that they did. What was their iniquity? And I talk about this in my book. I'm only letting you know so you know I did the research. If you want to buy it, that's up to you. But I did the research, and what I discovered is that the god of the Amorites, his name was Martu, and his symbol was the same symbol, his logogram was the same logogram as Enlil. And I've talked about Enlil on this show, that Enlil is Satan. Enlil we find in Isaiah chapter 14, where it's talking about Halel. So Halel is the Middle Hebrew era equivalent of Enlil, which is Elil, which is Satan. And this is the one that that they were worshiping. They were worshiping this, but he's also related to Nimrod or Ninurta. So too many details to explain it all here, but just understand that the one that they were worshiping was Satan, or the son of Satan, who was Nimrod. And they were, as far as I can tell, they were making a deal with him to become hybrids. They didn't start that way, but they became hybrids. And then God said, okay, enough is enough. You guys weren't supposed to do that, which you very well know. And so then he dispossessed them. He destroyed them in judgment because of the things that they had done. We'll get to King Og in the next chapter, but just understand that these Amorites were doing things that were nefarious. They were dangerous. They were satanic. And I think something we forget, Bob, is that Satan doesn't do this stuff for free, right? It always comes at a tremendous cost. When you make a deal with the devil, guess what you got to sell him? Your soul, right? That is the bargain. And so these people were selling their souls to the devil. Let's just be really clear about this. These ancient gods, they're all leading back to one entity, Satan, the devil. And they made a deal with him for prosperity, for power, for fame. Then they probably got that, but then they had to pay the ultimate price. So you always lose when you make a deal with the devil.
The Cyclone was the worst of all the kings. He was the most violent of all these kings. The people that these Nephilim, as it were, these hybrids were horrible. They were cannibalistic. They were satanic. And what God has them do is take down the worst bully of all these kings that are all part of this entire construction. And these are the worst. This particular king was the worst during this same period. And they went down. Now, move it forward. You're going to Judges, and the three spies are going out there, and they're looking at the land, etc. And what does the woman tell them? The king's he is so frightened of you. He's frightened of you. You took down Cyclone. You took down the entire superpower of the world, Egypt, 40 years ago. And your reputation exceeds you. It's got ahead of you. Talk about men of reputation. That's who you people are. Irrespective of the problems that they didn't go into the land 40 years earlier. But the fact is, the reputation that these people have, they take down evil. I'm sure the king of Jericho made all kinds of deals with Cyclone. He did everything possible because he wanted to live. If you have to sacrifice some of my children, we'll sacrifice the children. If we need to do this or that or what have you, we'll do whatever is necessary to have peace at whatever price it is. And now somebody of renown 40 years earlier destroyed the superpower, their God destroys the superpower of the world. Now those people, those children are on our doorstep, and they destroyed the king of Cyclone, the worst of all, and they killed him. They took down everything. The other thing I wanted to mention that was that can be glossed over very quickly is that God is faithful to his people. Who was Esau? He made a promise to Abraham about Esau. And what does God say through Moses to the people? When we go into Esau's land, do not do anything to provoke. They're part of your family. The same can go for Lot. He's the nephew of Abraham. And together, both Esau and Lot, the scripture states right there that they destroyed all of these giants, the Rephidim. They destroyed them in their land. They completely annihilated them. There was no presence of them. God honors that. God gave them the ability to destroy them. They did a righteous thing. They cleared the land of these hybrids and the demonic forces that were with them. And so God says through Moses to the children of Israel, leave these people alone. All we want to do is buy food, buy water, and go through their land. This is God's land. He has given it to these people. Do not try to go and take that land. I have land that I promised you I will give you. So again, God's promises are true. And he stands up, and hundreds of years may pass, and beautiful things still happen because God promised them. As we move forward, it's an amazing situation how the people of Jericho later on, as we will read in Judges, and we continue on the story, that everyone was frightened of Israel. They were fearful. Their kings quaked in their privacy, and they knew their time was over.
You know, it's interesting. The New Testament says, if God is for us, who can be against us, right? Paul says that. Back then, probably Israel's enemies were saying, if God is for them, who can be against them, right? I mean, you know, and it's interesting that when we look forward to the book of Revelation, the world is going to say of the beast, they're going to say, who can make war? Who can stand against the beast? But of course, that's all going to come crashing down when the Messiah comes back. But, I think something that we need to underscore here is that there's been this battle going back and forth. And a lot of times where the spiritual battle that we often talk about, that we cannot see with our eyes. But back then, you could kind of see this battle because those people were on the ground, right? You had these demonic entities of sorts that were there, and you could go and interact with them or kill them, hopefully. And, the battle is real, even though we can't see it with our eyes much of the time. The battle's real. And that is really what we have to remember.
As you have mentioned, and there is this veil between the spiritual world and the world that we exist in. And we're such material, and we were talking about it earlier today. We're so materialistic in our worldview that we don't see what is behind the veil. And what's behind the veil is sometimes greater in terms of the presence of enemies than we see. It's always invisible to us. That's where the discernment of the Holy Spirit moving through us and in us that can help us perceive and make decisions to know where we're located. They're going to be going into Bashan. They're going to go into this demonic territory of the Cyclone, right? With the Amorites. They are there. But do they understand the veil that's there? Do they understand the legacy of evil that has permeated this entire area? And God says, I'm going to give it to you. But you're going to have to be aware of where you are and what your circumstances are. Because you really do not fight against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and dominions. Later on, that revelation will happen in the new covenant. And those realities will become more equipping for us in our time. But do we take those statements to heart? Do we really believe them? Oh, I got a great job. I'm going to get. Well, wait a minute. What is this company? What does it represent? What does it do? Oh, you don't understand. I'm just going to be a manager in this company, and it's going to be really super. What does the company do? Who are these people? What are the outcomes that they're looking for themselves? What is it that is going on with this firm? We never take a look at the bigger picture because there's always that veil there. And the enemy always opens the door for us to come on in and get trapped one way or another. Oh, you got so much money, you got so much stock, you got so much stuff, you're into it. How can you back out now is the issue. Wow. And so the treachery that happens, we have to take a hard look. And more than that, we have to turn around and have a relationship with the Lord to be able to have the discernment where he says, I opened that door, allowed you to open it, to go into it, to see what you're going to do. You're coming back and you're saying, Father, is this the place you really want me? Is this the place you want me to go? Is it really? If not, I'm really asking you to give me the courage and ability to say, I trust you enough that we'll go somewhere else.
Amen. Let's do chapter 3. We'll round this out, and boy, it gets even more exciting. Then we turned and went up the road to Bashan, and Og, king of the Bashan, and interestingly, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And the Lord said to me, do not fear him. Do not fear him and all his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Cyclone, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So the Lord our God also delivered into our hands Og, king of the Bashan, with all his people, and we attacked him until he had no survivors remaining. We took all his cities at the time. There was not a city which we did not take from them. 60 cities, all the region of Argov, the kingdom of Og in the Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many rural towns, and we utterly destroyed them, as we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. But all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as booty for ourselves. And at that time we took the land from the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on this side of the Jordan, from the river Arnon to Hermon. The Sidonians call Hermon Sirion, and the Amorites call it Senir. All the cities of the plain in Gilead and all Bashan as far as Salcah and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. Is it not in Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits is its length and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. And this land which we possessed at that time from Aroer, which is by the river Arnon, and half the mountains of Gilead, its cities I gave to the Reubenites and the Gadites. The rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half-tribe of Manasseh. All the region of Argob with all Bashan was called the land of the giants, or the Rephaim. Yair, the son of Manasseh, took all the region of Argob as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Mahatites, and called Bashan after his own name, Havot Yair, to this day. Also, I gave Gilead to Machir and to the Reubenites and the Gadites. I gave from Gilead as far as the river Arnon in the middle of the river, as the border as far as the river Yabok, the border of the people of Ammon. The plain also with the Jordan as the border with from Chineret, that's the Sea of Galilee, as far as the east side of the Sea of the Arabah, the salt city below the slopes of Pisgah. Then I commanded you at that time, saying, the Lord your God has given you this land to possess. All your men of valor shall cross over armed before your brethren, the children of Israel. But your wives, your little ones, and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall stay in your cities, which I have given you, until the Lord has given rest to your brethren as to you, and they also possess the land which the Lord your God is giving them beyond the Jordan. Then each of you may return to his possession, which I have given you. And I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, your eyes have seen all that the Lord your God has done to these 2 kings, so will the Lord do to all the kingdoms through which you pass. You must not fear them, for the Lord your God himself fights for you. Then I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand, for what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So the Lord said to me, enough of that. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes toward the west, the north, the south, and the east. Behold it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan, but command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him. For he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. So we stayed in the valley opposite Beit Peor. All right. Well, I'm loving this chapter. Okay. So, sometimes people are like, oh, you're just trying to sell your book. Look, I'm not just trying to sell my book, but look, I did write this book and I found some amazing things. Okay. And I'm going to share them with you. So what I discovered, a couple of important things. First of all, the word Bashan means snake dragon. It comes from an Akkadian word, Bashmu, which means snake dragon, or sometimes dragon snakes, but it's the same idea. This land was called the land of the snake dragon. Now, let me just share a picture with you guys. You know what? I might even have it in my computer. Maybe I'm so clever, I could pull it up for you guys. I'd love to do that because it's a very cool picture. And it's the kind of thing that when you see it, you're like, no way. Okay, so let me just share this picture. This will only take a second for me to share it with you. And I think you'll kind of see what I'm getting at. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that. So down here, let me just make sure that everybody is seeing that. Okay, so good. Oh, hold on. Well, okay, I'll start here. These are 3 different variations on a theme. This is the Bashmu. Okay, this is the Bashmu. This is that snake dragon. All right, so take a good look at that, right? So snake kind of body with maybe some 4 legs here, okay, something like that. And then it goes up kind of in a dragon-like. So kind of a weird dragon-looking thing. This almost looks like a seahorse, right? It's somehow standing up for some reason. But it's got these little arms or something, okay? Now, when we this is up in the northern part of Israel. It's about 30 miles south of Mount Hermon, and maybe, I don't know exactly how many miles, but it's kind of a little bit north. It's a little bit northeast of the Sea of Galilee. This is a geoglyph. Okay, and down here, this circle, this is Gilgal Rephaim. And right here, you can see this geoglyph, right? You got the two eyes, and you can see this snake. This thing is about 2/3 of a mile long. It's huge. It's absolutely huge to just get a scale of how big this thing is. This is the Bashmu. This is the land of the snake dragon. All right, so this is what we have to understand. This is what was going on in that land. This wasn't just some empty promise or some fairy tale, right? You've got it right there. It's a geoglyph, nearly 2/3 of a mile. You can't get around that, right? So take a good look at that, guys. That is what we're talking about, the land of Bashan. That's why I say the Bashan, because it's the land of the snake dragons. Now, who was the daddy there? Who was the king of that area? Well, Og. Well, I went and I looked at his name. I traced it back to Sumerian. I explained why I did that in the book, but I traced it back to Sumerian. Sumerian is the language and it's the culture of Shinar. When the Bible talks about Shinar, and you guys know somebody famous from Shinar? You should. A guy named Nimrod. Okay, and what did Nimrod do? He established Babel and a bunch of cities, and he was called the mighty hunter, and he was the one who became a Gibor, right? Something kind of weird there. He became a hybrid. And as I was talking before, Nimrod was known in the ancient world as Ninurta, who is called Lord of the Earth. He was known as the son of Enlil, who is Satan. And we find both Enlil and Nimrod, or Ninurta, in connection with the god of the Amorites, who had the same epithet of Great Mountain, which was an epithet for Enlil. And his Sumerian logogram was Martu. And Martu and Nimrod have the same consonants, which is pretty amazing. And so does Ninurta. So does Marduk. They're all the same letters when you start boiling it down and looking really closely. Now, when we go to Ugaritic sources, so Ugarit is a city-state in the modern land of Lebanon. And so around, 1200 to 1400, it was kind of somewhere, maybe 1500. That was their heyday. And they talked about Mount Hermon. Okay, now Hermon is the word for something that is set apart for destruction. Something set apart for destruction. So basically, somebody would take a sacred oath saying, if I don't do such and such, may I be destroyed. That is a harem, all right? And of course, we have the word harem, right, where it's a group of ladies that have been set aside for the king, right? That's not such a nice thing. But that's a later usage of that term. But that's where the term Hermon comes from. According to ancient sources, it was 200 angels that came down on Mount Hermon, and they took a sacred oath. I talk about that in the book, and I talk about this oath that they imprecated themselves with and said, look, if we don't do this, we're in trouble, right? And that led to the rise of the Nephilim. So this mountain has had a very long time in history. But let me get back to the Ugaritic people. They talked about this mountain, and it was kind of sort of like a Mount Olympus and a Hades, but at the same time. And they talked about a deified god of the dead who dwelt there and also was known to be at Ashdod and Edrei. Remember, we just read about that in chapter 3, right? That Og's headquarters were at Ashdod, which is in Edrei. So the Ugaritic source tells us about this deified god of the dead whose monument, if you will, or his, great mountain was Hermon. And he was also at Ashdod and Edrei. Okay, but wait, there's more. So Og's name back in Sumerian, his name, get this, it means death. Okay. Yeah, I know, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? It means death. His name means death. I mean, that's pretty wild, right? So you put all of this together. We have extra biblical confirming sources saying, yes, this Og person was a real dude. He was known as a deified dead king. He was at Ashdod and Edrei, right? So I think there's zero possibility that he did not exist, that he absolutely did exist. I mean, the Bible said that that's enough, right? That settles it. It's good enough for me. Yes, but it's also cool to have external sources that are telling us the same thing. And so that what that does is it strengthens our faith in the Bible. We can believe it by faith. It's awesome, but it's really cool. And we have that corroborating evidence. And I say, okay, it's not just because I have faith, but look at this evidence, right? This is pretty cool too. And so here, this God, his name means death. Now, how tall was King Og of Bashan? Well, I talk about that in Corrupting Image Volume 1, in case you're interested. So he was about 15 feet tall. He weighed about 3,000 pounds. Your basal metabolic rate at that point means you need to consume 22,000 calories per day just to keep your ticker going. All right, that's not even if you're going to go for a run. That's just to keep your heart going, just to keep your bodily functions going. If you're in your deathbed and you just need your basics to stay alive, that's what he needed. That's a lot of pizzas. That's a lot of burgers. That's like 63 cheeseburgers, 12 pizzas, or like 6 lambs. Okay. So, well, maybe not 6 lambs, but anyway, it was a lot. Okay. It was a lot. And when they say that it was a land that devours its inhabitants, they said that back in Numbers chapter 13. And that is the reason why they went in there. They're like, whoa, there's some giants in this land. We can't do this, which was true. It was true. They couldn't do it. But guess who could? God could do it. And that was, of course, what led to their great sin, is that they forgot who was fighting for them. They thought, oh, I can't do this in my strength. And they were right. They could not do it in their strength. But God could do it, and he could use them to do these great things. And that's always where we're going to find ourselves when we start to say, oh, no, I can't do this. That's when you should say to yourself, oh, self, you are so right. I cannot. But I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so had they relied on the source of their power, then they would never have had this issue. But of course, they didn't. So understand, Og was real. He was big. He was hungry. And he was dangerous. So when God sends in the people of Israel to destroy him and the men and the women and the children. Now, this is one of these passages that people that really don't study the Bible say, well, that God of yours, he sure is a misogynist and he's a genocidal maniac. And why would anybody want to follow this God? But what we have to put into context is that the being that lived there, he was the genocidal maniac. He was the one who was a destroyer. He was the deified God of the dead, and his name meant death. And his land was the land of the snake dragons. Now, there's still more to the story, because I really encourage you to check this out. I've been teaching through the book of Mark. It's been a lot of fun. You can go to thewaycongregation.com and you can get the videos there, or just stay here on my YouTube channel and just go to the Sabbath teachings, the Shabbat teachings. And what does Jesus do? He is taking the battle to them. He crosses over the Sea of Galilee. And who does he find? He finds the legion. He's in their territory. He's in the land of the snake dragon. Isaiah calls it the land of the shadow of death, Tzalmavet in Hebrew. And that is where Jesus was going, was to this land, the land of Og of Bashan. That's where Jesus was taking the fight. The whole area of Decapolis was where this land of Bashan was. And Jesus was taking the fight to them. And then he takes his disciples to Caesarea Philippi, and he says the gates of Hades will not prevail. That was at the base of the mountain. Then 6 days later, he takes Peter, James, and John to the top of Mount Hermon. That's when the angels came down. That's where the transfiguration was. And he's basically saying, this is my mountain, which is what it says in Psalm 68. I mean, the amazing things about Hermon, that's why I called my book Hybrids, Hades, and the Mount Hermon Connection, okay? Because there's an incredible amount of history in there. All right, and I'm just giving you a tiny little bit of it. But it's really an incredible story. And, Bob, you and I have talked about this many times, and it blows your mind, doesn't it? I mean, I'm still blown away at the things that God showed me through my studies and what we find in Scripture, and it's just mind-numbing.
Well, with Moses, we see a very physical reality of the battle. With Yeshua, which is ironic, that it's the last 30 days of his life, and he takes the battle to the enemy. He goes to the land of Bashan, as you just mentioned. He goes to Mount Hermon, and he deals with the invisible. He deals through the veil, and he takes the fight directly into the invisible world. So you have two bookends. On one side, you have Moses, who has 30 days or so left in his life, and he's going to have a birthday present of eternal life. And you have Yeshua, who goes through the veil, takes the fight directly to the enemy, and he says, this is my land. I'm taking it over. Oh, by the way, you may think you still have the land deed for this land. Wait a few days. I'm going to show you how you lost it. Meanwhile, the rest becomes history. He is crucified. He is resurrected, and he ascends into heaven. He has taken back the very earth that the enemy had, that he stole from two naive people, the first generation of Adam and Eve. And here he now restores it. And there at the base of that mountain of Hermon, he says, this is not death. I am commissioning my ecclesia, my administrative people, to establish justice and to go out and win the world. I'm giving you the ability to do that because the people of Moses' time were not fully equipped. They did not have what I'm going to ask you to do. In fact, I'm commanding you to do, to stay in Jerusalem until Shavuot. What is Shavuot? It's the commemoration of the giving of the Torah. But with that reality and reflection comes the document. It's the giving of the Torah, God's mind. His will is being celebrated. And now the Spirit of God breaks like an egg over the entire Temple Mount. And the people that are righteous, looking for the King, receive empowerment that have been passed on to the body, to the ecclesia, to us, the administrators of the kingdom, to establish justice and liberty throughout the earth, to bring the values of the kingdom to be translated from beyond the veil into a reality of what justice looks like, what goodness looks like, what love looks like, what it feels like, how it's experienced. this is what's one of the most astounding bookend situation that's really amazing with this particular portion of Scripture, because it begins with this possible, oh well, I didn't finish my mission, and I'm going to be going home empty-handed. No. It's all the way through that you are going to receive everything that God wants you to have. All my promises are correct. Every one of them are going to be fulfilled in you individually if you will step up and not fight flesh and blood, but go out into the very invisible world that we very rarely want to think about or even acknowledge that exists. And there, take the turf there, and then translate that into behavior that demonstrates what the kingdom looks like.
Yeah. And I just want to kind of cap this off that, so Moses didn't get to go into the land, but where do we see him when he appears again? The next time he appears, he's on Mount Hermon.
Mount Hermon. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. He's like, take that, Satan. It's just so cool. God's like, okay, you don't get to go in today, but I've got something planned for you, and you're going to love it.
It's coming in later.
Oh, it's really cool how, God just pulls it all together. And, my personal take on this is that when Jesus, Elijah, and Moses were up on top of Mount Hermon, and they were commiserating of like what was going to happen, right? We don't have a lot of details, just they were talking about his death. Okay. And obviously we know why, because this then purchased back humanity and the world, etc. It must have been really scary for Satan. He's like, wait a second, what are those three doing on my mountain? All right, because think about it. Moses, with his crew, came and kicked his butt. He destroyed Sihon. He destroyed Og, the king of death, whose mountain that was. And then Elijah had his own battle with the prophets of Baal, who were almost certainly, it's actually, we know it. They were also known as Melkart. Melkart is the king of Tyre, described in Ezekiel 28. So he's gotten whooped by the two guys on Mount Hermon that Jesus is talking with. He must have been like, uh-oh, we're going to rumble. Something's going down.
There's the bookends.
Oh, man. Oh, and sure enough. But, it wasn't a battle in the physical. It wasn't a battle with swords and whatnot. It wasn't even a spiritual battle between, Michael and his angels and Satan and his angels. It wasn't that kind of battle either. It was the battle of ultimate sacrifice. It was the battle where the king of the world laid down his life, and he outfoxed Satan, and he got the world back, and Satan helped him accomplish it by putting him on the cross. That's just amazing. When you put it together. I want to share just one more passage before we call it a night. I think this is going to blow people's minds, because it really blew my mind. Okay, so actually, let me go to. I got two. Okay, I lied. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't help myself. Okay, but check this out. Look, a mountain of God is the mountain of Bashan. A mountain of many peaks is the mountain of Bashan. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly go to Psalm 22. I just want to give you guys that context, just so you kind of get a sense here. So here's Jesus. He's on the cross. Everything is happening very literally. But then we have this really weird thing. Many bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. They gape at me with their mouths like a raging and roaring lion. All right, so it says Svavuni Parim Rabim Abirei Bashan. So this word Abirei Bashan, this is mighty demonic spirits, okay, or mighty divine ones, okay, of Bashan. You're like, wait a second. I don't remember bulls, being around Jesus. I don't know anything about this. All the other stuff, I'm poured out like water, my bones are out of joint. All of that was very, very literal. But when he's on the cross, we don't see anything about this bulls of Bashan thing. But when we understand that Bashan is the snake dragons, so it's the mighty ones, these demonic host of the snake dragon. Oh, right.
It's the other part of the veil.
It was the same ones that he later, or that he had already gone before, and he had defeated them, and they were cowering before him. And now he's on the cross, and they're circling him. And it says they gape at me with their mouths like a raging and roaring lion. You can almost hear them saying, "Oh, you're a loser. You're supposed to crush our head. You are going to defeat us. We were all cowering before you, but look where you are now. You're dying. You're going to become part of our kingdom, the kingdom of death, and we will own you forever." And Jesus, in his incredible pain and anguish, you almost wonder deep, deep, deep down in his soul if he was kind of smiling, saying, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm enduring this for the joy that's set before me. And just wait till I jingle those keys before you guys. This is the ultimate victory. And he didn't do it through a show of force.
It's the high drama. It's really high drama. He pierces the veil. He pierces the veil, and they are those Baals that are sitting out there, and they're all insulting him. And little do they know, give me 3 days, and we'll settle this.
Yeah. And you wish you never met me.
You just walked into it. You walked into it, you idiots.
Oh, man. Well, this has been delightful. Oh, yeah. So, guys, we're so glad you could join us. I will not be here next week. I'm sorry about that. But I'll be gone. So, count me out for the next 2 weeks. And looking at my calendar. So, the next time we'll be together is August 4th. So, everybody stay up on the parashot. Sorry we can't get to those sooner, but I won't be around, so sorry about that. But we will get back into the parashiot, and we'll have a great time when we get back into these. I'll tell you, this is such a great book. So looking forward to it. Bob, thank you, as always, for being such a great co-host. And everyone, have a good night. God bless you.